My name is John Olajide, and on behalf of the Dallas Regional Chamber, welcome to this Board of Advisors event featuring three incredible leaders in the COVID-19 research and biotech space. We've got today Dr. Linda Stewart, of course, Lyda Hill, and Nicole Small. As the founder and CEO of Access, the leader in home healthcare technology, and the 2020 DRC board chair, I am particularly interested in today's conversation. We'll hear an update on the race for a COVID-19 vaccine and from two local leaders at the cutting edge of medical research right here in the Dallas region. This is a particularly timely conversation since we just passed 200,000 deaths of those identified as having died of COVID over the last 6 months. I want to make sure and thank our presenting sponsor, UT Southwestern, and our corporate sponsor, Biotech, for their support of this critical conversation. Your belief in this type of programming is very much appreciated. A few years ago, this Board of Advisors program was created to bring decision makers and top executives together to network and connect and discuss the issues affecting the business community. Although our networking looks different today than it did when we gathered in person in February, it's our hope that the programming continues to serve you well as a regional leader. So we'll talk about today's format. Dr. Mark Neve, the Executive Vice President for Institutional Advancement at our presenting sponsor, UT Southwestern Medical Center, will introduce all of our distinguished speakers, like Linda Stewart, Lyda Hill, and Nicole Small. Linda and Nicole will have a conversation followed by our second conversation featuring Lyda and Nicole. And then Eric Kruger with our corporate sponsor, Biotech, will close up a few minutes before 1:30 p.m. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Mark Neve, the Executive Vice President for Institutional Advancement at our presenting sponsor, UT Southwestern Medical Center. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you, John. And John, by the way, thank you for your leadership through these extraordinary times. And thank you to the DRC and all of the members of the DRC. Your just commitment to all of us healthcare institutions has been very much appreciated and quite frankly needed. So, and thank you to everyone for joining us today for, as John said, what will be really an exciting set of conversations focused on extremely timely and critical issues. Obviously, development of the COVID-19 vaccine is something that we all talk about. We're all wondering when, so we're going to hear a little bit about that. I just want to let you know, at UT Southwestern, we also are working very hard to make that a reality as quickly as possible. Our research labs are engaged in over 200 or so at this point COVID-19 studies across the entire spectrum, from basic science to clinical trials. Not only are we investigating the development of a vaccine, but we're also working to understand things like the mental health of intensive care unit nurses caring for COVID-19 patients, the medical impact of patients, those who are reluctant to come to the emergency room, as an example, worried about, the fact that they could get COVID, and other myriad of ripple effects that, this just continues to have on healthcare in the United States broadly. At the same time, while we're all focused on the pandemic, life does go on, especially here at UT Southwestern. We're still working every day to educate the next generation of leaders in patient care, biomedical science, disease prevention, through our medical school, graduate school, and biomedical sciences and School of Health Professions. We're conducting high-impact, internationally recognized research in more than 500 basic science and translational research labs right here on the Dallas campus, with more than 550 clinical trials happening every year. So as many of you, recognize already, our exceptional, clinical care that happens primarily at William P. Clements University Hospital. What you may not know is that UT Southwestern has been working for more than a decade to help position North Texas, really as a national hub for biotechnology. That's been in partnership with, folks that we'll be hearing from later today. In fact, we serve as an incubator of biotechnology development, engaging with local entrepreneurial community and investors and connecting them with our faculty members here who are doing fantastic scientific discoveries and really just blazing a path forward, to develop new therapeutic, diagnostic, and medical devices. Of course, the product we're talking about is medical treatment or medication, improving the quality of life for the individual, reducing suffering, in some cases extending their life. But those potential cures are worthless unless we can get them out of the laboratory and into the real world, which is really what we're talking about today. I'll just take a moment just to mention one recent success. I think, many of you may have heard about some of our recent successes over the past year. We've had two fantastic billion-dollar exits of companies that companies started here, science based on UT Southwestern, the work based on UT Southwestern science. But we have a recent one, and it's very recent, actually just hit the stock market today, trading on the NASDAQ today. It's a company called Taysha Gene Therapies, and it's based on UT Southwestern scientists exploring ways to treat neurological disorders caused by mutations in a single gene. An example is Rett syndrome. These are extremely rare genetic conditions, often leave patients, in the case of Rett syndrome, young children unable to walk or talk. And by adding back that correct gene, this type of therapy fixes the cause, sort of a one-time fix. And to get that cure to market, Taysha Gene Therapy signed a partnership with us and raised over $125 million from leading biotech investors, across Texas and actually across the United States. The company's combined experience in gene therapy, drug development, and commercialization with our gene therapy program really led us quickly, in less than a year, to really build a program looking at targeting pipelines focused on both rare and large sort of market indications. Through this alliance, Taysha is able to translate treatments rapidly from early discovery into the clinics for treatments of patients with progressive neurological diseases. And like I said, in one short year, we've already proven, at least to the marketplace at this point, that there's a lot of opportunity here to really take our critical, basic level science and really turn that from, as they say, from the bench to the bedside quickly. And so I'm just excited that I'm able to share that with you today. So again, it's a local company that, by the way, is staying local, which I think is important. It means jobs for this community as well as the great, obviously, healthcare that will come. So for those of you, who I have not met and want to learn more about what's happening here at UT Southwestern, please reach out to me. The chamber obviously can provide my contact information, but don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to talk about all the fantastic things that are happening here at UT Southwestern and how they impact North Texas. So with that, I'm pleased to turn the program over to two very distinguished speakers today who will be led in a very thoughtful conversation, and I'm sure that you will all enjoy it. First on the agenda is Dr. Linda Stewart. Linda is the Deputy Director of Vaccines and Human Immunobiology at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Dr. Stewart is a physician scientist. She holds a BA in medicine and an MD from the University of Cambridge and the University of London, and also a PhD in microbiological sciences and immunology from the University of Edinburgh. She completed residency training in internal medicine in the United Kingdom. Dr. Stewart moved across the pond in 2003 to join the faculty of Harvard Medical School and the MGH, Massachusetts General Hospital, and after some impressive work in developmental immunology and integrative biology, joined the foundation in 2016. Interviewing her today is Nicole Small, the CEO of LH Capital and Lida Hill Philanthropies, and a good friend to UT Southwestern and good personal friend. Nicole is a co-founder of If Then Initiative, a program started with the idea that if we support a woman in STEM, then she can change the world. It seeks to empower current innovators and inspire the next generation of pioneers. Following that conversation, we'll hear from another friend of UT Southwestern, a woman that needs no introduction to folks here, Ms. Lida Hill. Lida is a Dallas entrepreneur, philanthropist, and one of the most generous women I have ever had the good fortune to meet. She's the president of LH Holdings and the namesake of the Lida Hill Foundation. She believes above all that science is the answer. Lida is committed to funding transformational advances in science and nature, and to empowering nonprofit organizations, and to improving local communities of greatest importance to her, Texas and Colorado. Her new project, which I believe she'll be touching upon today, is Pegasus Park Development, a biotech hub that you might have read about earlier this week. It'll be a source of innovation in life sciences, and UT Southwestern is just very pleased to be a partner in that and to be a tenant. We'll be having our tech transfer office over there, as well as some other offices there. So we're just very pleased to partner with Pegasus Park. So without further ado, please help me welcome Dr. Linda Stewart, Lada Hill, and Nicole Small. Nicole, take it away.
Great, thank you, Dr. Neve. We're so glad to be here. Thank you all so much for taking the time. I am going to very quickly turn it over to Dr. Stewart because she, I think, is probably one of the most in-demand brains in the world right now. So Dr. Stewart, thank you for taking your very precious time to visit with us here in North Texas today about vaccine development. Dr. Stewart's going to talk quickly about the Gates Foundation work in the area, the vaccine process, which I think we're all getting educated on every day, and talk a little bit about the access to the vaccine from a global health perspective. So Dr. Stewart, thank you again for being here, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it right over to you to hear all your wisdom and how soon can we get back to the world.
Hello, everybody. I'm very thankful for the invitation, and I'm looking forward to maybe, hopefully, helping you understand this very complex ecosystem that we are in. I just want to check that you can see my slides. Okay, great. So I thought I'd take a few minutes just to tell you a little bit about this journey from the lab to a shot in the arm, as I like to, or sometimes we refer to it as the race to the 2 billion doses. And I'm presenting on behalf of a full team within the foundation that's been dedicated over the last 9 months or so to the COVID response. So when the pandemic broke, the foundation really set about doing 4 things. Bearing in mind that our focus is mostly on low and middle income countries, but also on disenfranchised populations around the world. We wanted to first protect the most vulnerable, and this is really, it required us to strengthen the sort of coordination and healthcare systems in multiple countries, in low and middle income countries. We embarked on large surveillance efforts and diagnostic efforts to fill gaps in global response partners, particularly, for instance, on the African subcontinent that had very poor diagnostic platforms. We set about to minimize the social and economic impact, both around the globe, but also within this country, and then also to develop treatments and a vaccine for which could, we hope, help secure equitable and global access around the globe. So clearly, this is not something we've done alone. This is something that has required really a global coordination, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. As I said, the research and development part of this really has had 3 pillars: to develop diagnostics, to develop therapies, and then to develop vaccines that can prevent COVID-19 from becoming a disease with endemic potential. But unfortunately, I think now that we've seen it spread so widely across the globe, we are probably here with this disease for the long haul. So I thought I would give everybody a very quick primer on what the foundation does as far as vaccines, and then what the normal vaccine R&D process is. So the foundation is deeply invested in vaccines because we recognize they're the public health tool with the greatest impact. And over the past 20 years, the foundation has spent billions of dollars on developing and delivering vaccines to protect children in low and middle income countries. And every year, the discovery team, which is where I sit, we spend about $50 million just on developing tools needed for the discovery and translation of new vaccines and monoclonal antibody therapies for global health. And we do so by investing in a disease agnostic way. So we work both in disease specific areas such as HIV, TB, malaria, for instance, but also in a disease agnostic way where we really built a comprehensive toolkit for vaccine and antibody R&D. And this is really what we've used in this case to leverage these prior investments to bring forward the Accelerate COVID vaccine. We've built an enabling framework that can support any and all foundation priority diseases, including COVID-19. We prioritize cross-cutting platforms that can be used in disease-specific, disease-agnostic ways, and novel technologies, including novel technologies with very long timelines. So some of you, I'm now sure, have heard about these messenger RNA vaccines. We first invested in those in 2014. So we've been working and developing those in the background for 6 or so years. So vaccine R&D normally takes 15 years. And just to put this problem in context, the fastest vaccine that's ever been developed is 4 years, which is the mumps vaccine. The reason it takes that long is there are these multiple stages that you have to go through to get to a licensed and registered vaccine that could also be deployed that just take a long time. And what we've really sought to do with this COVID response is to bring this timeline down from 15 years to more like 2 or 3. And so I'm going to very quickly go through what are the stages, what have we done differently, and who's doing what. So the first stage of vaccine R&D is this early discovery and development phase. This can take up to 5 or 10 years. In HIV, we're still trying to discover a meaningful vaccine. And really, this actually is something that's been really accelerated. And we were out of discovery probably within about 2 months in this pandemic. In the next phase is phase 1 trials, which are small safety trials that really look at safety in healthy adults. And these have been done very quickly with the current COVID vaccines, and they're rapidly advancing to show once they've been demonstrated, you have a reasonably safe product that can be used at least in a trial setting. The phase 2 and phase 3 studies are really the ones that start showing testing efficacy and also testing safety. And in the case of COVID-19, these have actually been brought together into phase 2/3. So these are all happening simultaneously. So that we've run this phase together. And I show that star as to where we are currently, and we're in some of the vaccine studies that are ongoing now. We're kind of in the midst of the phase 3. The next thing that will have to happen is somebody will need to register the vaccine and say that it is safe, it is efficacious, and it can be used in the public. And that's really the thing that's we're all kind of waiting for, which is going to be the big, we have a vaccine that people have been referring to. But the other problem with this is that you actually need to have enough doses. And this is, we are working at an unprecedented scale. And so this manufacturing piece of really getting to, for instance, 4 billion doses that would be required to protect the planet is something that has never been done at this scale. And so even in the US, even after we have a safe and efficacious vaccine, how long it will take us to get the number of doses we require to protect the population is unknown, and it probably will be out sometime into 2021, Q2 or Q3, Q4 2021. And if you think about that in the globe and around low and middle income countries, this is an enormous task, and we may not be able to protect the planet until 2023, 2024. So this is actually the biggest problem, and this is the piece of the puzzle that I think people are not necessarily understanding when they talk about when is a vaccine going to be available. It really is when will it get into your arm. For this whole global response, it requires this very complex global partnerships and global coordination. And there are 2 main people who are working in the vaccine space. There's CEPI, the Coalition for Epidemic and Pandemic Preparedness and Innovation, and then Gavi, who is the Global Access to Vaccines Initiative. And those are really, CEPI is doing the R&D and Gavi is doing the procurement and deployment. But I just want to reiterate how complicated this is and how many doses we need. And the 2 billion dose scale is really something that has never been done, and certainly never been done within the time frame that we're currently challenging ourselves to do. So I will stop there. Thank you, and then happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Stewart. That the work that you all are doing on behalf of the whole world, we are all so grateful for. And obviously you all have had a head start, having spent so much time in the vaccine space for so long. And you've been a great partner to Line of Health Philanthropies over the years as an advisor. So thank you. I'm going to kick it off with a couple of questions, and then we're hoping to get some questions from the audience as well. Will you talk a little bit, you talked about obviously the challenge of manufacturing and scale up. Will you talk also a little bit, we talked about this the other day, as you guys are primarily focused on developing world, but in our own country, we've got a tremendous amount of at-risk population here as well. Can you just talk for a minute about this idea, that kind of last mile piece of kind of where your head is and where you guys are thinking about getting it even from scale up to that last mile? How do we make sure the people who need it most actually get the vaccine?
So maybe I'll just answer that first by saying how important it is to actually think about how you distribute the vaccine. So there's some modeling data showing that if you just gave the vaccine to everybody, irrespective of thinking about who needs it most, you would have, say, I can't remember the number, but like say it's 2 million deaths or 3 million deaths. If you give it equitably, if you give it and you actually prioritize the people most in need, across the globe, we could halve the number of deaths. And so this really is something that requires a lot of thought and a lot of prioritization to actually say, okay, let's make sure the healthcare workers, the elderly, the people with pre-existing conditions, let's make sure they get this vaccine first, because that way we will actually be, this is how it will be most impactfully deployed. So, I think that's something that's going on. I believe they're beginning to think about that in the US now, and it's certainly something that's been going on at a global scale to try and work out how are you going to prioritize who you're going to vaccinate first. With the infrastructure to get this sort of vaccine out is unbelievable. So even within the US, some of these vaccines need -80 cold chains or ultra cold chain. So you have to build ultra cold freezers around the globe. And even in deep rural parts of America, they don't have these types of freezers. So how, even within the US, some of these vaccines may struggle to get out into the small rural communities. So this is a huge logistical challenge, undoubtedly.
Well, thank you. And we are proud that our hometown company, McKesson, I know is deeply engaged in this conversation. And we are going to be watching with admiration and cheering as they work with people like the Gates Foundation to figure that out. So we appreciate that. One of the things that's on everybody's mind around vaccines as well is this question around public perception, the confidence in vaccines. Can you talk a little bit about how important it is and actually what role some of the corporate partners we have on the phone might play in helping think about the communication around vaccination? So let's just speed up for a minute and assume we have the vaccine and we're actually capable of delivering it. Talk a little bit about what it's going to take for public perception and to make sure people are willing to take the vaccine.
Yeah, I think this is a really important point. I mean, current, polling are saying, between 30 and 50% of people wouldn't take a vaccine if they had it. I think if we have, one of the things I reassure people is that this process that everybody's going through, the phase 2, the phase 3 process, it is still the same process. Safety is not going to be compromised. And we've seen the companies come out and say, they're not going to cut any corners. They don't want anybody to worry about the safety of this. We want maximal uptake. They are not going to compromise their reputations or people's lives to get a vaccine out fast. So I find that very reassuring. And I think it's important for people to really lean on the scientists and say, this is, there isn't some, strange conspiracy theory behind this. And I think it's particularly important for people within their own community to do that. So, for instance, in the Black community in America, it's much easier if that message is coming across from local community leaders. So I think we need to get down into the grassroots level to get the confidence in vaccines kind of brought to the place it needs to be. And the problem is if we don't vaccinate enough people, we're just going to be in this cycle of pandemic outbreaks forever.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And I think that gives us a lot in our own community to really think through as that last mile piece and making sure that we're thinking about the communities most at risk so that they do have the opportunity to be vaccinated. So thank you for that. All right, probably the last question. Tell us a little bit about some of the multiple companies involved. I don't know how much you can speak to those, but obviously there was some new news from J&J yesterday that could affect things like the distribution that maybe they don't need, they need refrigeration, but not -80 C. So can you talk a little bit about how many companies are working on this and what that kind of plays out to look like over the coming year?
So there are a number of companies. I'm not going to speak to any of them specifically. I mean, Operation Warp Speed, as everybody knows, I think there are currently 6 companies that are being supported by Operation Warp Speed. But there are many additional companies on top of that. And, I think one of the important things to realize that we need not just one vaccine to succeed, we need probably about 5 to get the number of doses. So we actually need probably a few more companies working on this. And we're really trying to work at the foundation, at least, in trying to incentivize and bring to the table some of the developing country vaccine manufacturers, such as, for instance, the Serum Institute of India, which are used to making vaccines at billion dose scales. Most vaccine companies actually aren't used to that. And so this is actually something that is very, is a problem. But we need all of the companies here at the table, and we need to get all of these vaccines out, and hopefully they'll all work, but we don't know that yet.
Well, we hope they all work for everybody's benefit. So, well, Dr. Stewart, is there anything else you'd like to tell us, or any other counsel you'd like to give to this? We've got an amazing group on the phone and watching you today. With all of our corporate leaders. Is there any other counsel you'd like to give to us, or anything that you'd like to ask for help from our community for you all to help make this happen?
No, I think, well, maybe one thing is I do think as corporate leaders, you both making sure your own employees are vaccinated and, encouraging them to and trying to reassure them and make sure maximize uptake. And where you can, facilitating not just your employees, but their families, or even trying to get into their communities if that's something that you could access. So I do think this is going to be a community effort once we have a vaccine to really get maximal uptake. So that may be a place that you guys could make a very big difference. So thank you. And thank you for the invitation, Nicole.
Thank you again so much for being here. We really appreciate it. And we know you probably have a lot more important things to do in the next half an hour. So if you drop off, just know we really appreciated your time today. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
We appreciate it. Well, we're going to turn from COVID. Lyda, if you want to turn your screen on, we're going to talk a little bit about the work that we're doing here in Dallas and in North Texas to think about how to make sure that if this happens again, we're ready. We've got the pharmaceuticals that we need. We've got the devices, the testing, all of the things that we need. And Dr. Neve spoke so eloquently at the beginning about all the amazing groundwork that's been laid by organizations like UT Southwestern, whether it's COVID, whether it's cancer, whether it's climate change. We fundamentally believe science is the answer. And we know that our community has been working for decades to think about how do we stand out as what many are now calling the third coast in the biotech arena. And I think maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe even like 18 months ago, not everybody was as focused on biotech as they are now. And I think when we began these conversations, sometimes we found ourselves trying to explain to people why they should care. If they had a personal health experience, they cared a lot. I think that there's probably not a single person in the world right now that doesn't understand and think about how important the biotech market is. And we've got a lot to offer here in North Texas, and we think the time is right to jump on building out an industry. And so with that, I wanted to turn it over to Lyda, who's been thinking about this for decades. So Lyda, will you start by telling us just a little bit about why you're so passionate about science and why you're passionate about biotech?
Well, I've just always loved math and science, and I appreciate the opportunity to share some of my thoughts today. I was a math and science major, and in 1979, when I had my first mastectomy, I got real interested in medical science and helped fund MD Anderson. And I also I had my investments begin to include science funds in my investment portfolio. And there was a fund in Colorado and fund from different places. And I would go to the meetings and listen to them talk about what each of these companies that they had in the fund. A fund would have like 10 or 12 companies, what each one of them was doing. And I really felt like that they weren't bringing the business side. You've got a researcher in a lab or you have a device maker. And I invested in some devices, and I felt that they needed more business expertise to be able to bring this to the bedside and bring it out into the market. So I decided to start my own fund, and I started Remedy Texas, short term, in 2011. And I brought in the two men who ran our oil and gas company, which we'd sold, to oversee it, because they needed that. I felt that business expertise would advance us a lot more rapidly than not having that. And thanks to my investments, I can now reinvest my proceeds from things like Peloton into hopefully future Pelotons, which was one of the investments that came through UT Southwest. Texas is really full of risk takers, and I'd like to encourage fellow Texans to invest here. When I started investing, everything was some highway in Boston and in California. And so that's when I started Remeditex. I was hoping I would encourage others to do so. It turns out that early stage life science, where I invested, is called the Valley of Death. I did not know that. And it's called that because the companies die, they don't make it. But all you need to have is a couple of companies out of your 10 or 12 be successful, and you can make a huge difference in the world. And that's what has encouraged me over the years. The next step in this is we've looked at it. There were several places in Dallas that wanted to start biotech companies. We had a couple of efforts to do that, and it never quite worked. So I'm excited, and that we are now venturing into something else, which I'm going to let Nicole explain. And I know it got out, the press release somehow got out a little early this week, but we're very excited about what we're bringing to Dallas. And we hope that this will be something that will get us moving and get other people involved in investing in Dallas. I mean, Texas is high risk people. We're high risk people. We drill little holes in the ground. I mean, we're high risk people. And so it seems to me that there should be some way that other people would like to invest in the potential of creating drugs, creating things that can help us all live better right here in Texas. And the next step is really very exciting, and Nicole's going to tell you about it because it has a historic Dallas name. You want to share that, Nicole?
I would love to. Well, thank you for that. Lyda, the work that you've obviously done over the years for biotech, and frankly, many more of our community leaders, this idea of trying to build a biotech industry and a biotech ecosystem has been around for decades. And as Mark alluded to earlier, the medical school obviously is a primary driver of the IP and the tech that has spun out. But we have just found over and over that the companies have kind of gotten taken to either coast. And we love Boston and we love Silicon Valley, but we really love Texas. And so when we think a lot about how our IP and our tech is being transferred to either coast, and you think about who's actually monetizing and capitalizing on those technologies, they're not reinvesting in our schools, they're not reinvesting in our communities, they're not reinvesting in our own institutions because they're on either coast. And so we've been spending the last several years really thinking and talking to everyone, many of which are on the phone today, about how to bring everybody together to really think about how do we further the biotech effort in North Texas. And Lyda said, we've tried a couple of things in the past, and we really felt like the time was right. And it's biotech, it's risky, it may still not work, but Warren Buffett told Lyda when she joined the Giving Pledge once, do the things that other people can't and won't do, not what they can and will do. And that really is sort of the ethos of Lyda Health Philanthropies and LH Capital. We sometimes like to take the high risk swings to see if we can make something happen. And we really do believe the time is right for North Texas. So we're excited. We've announced over the last couple of months a project called Pegasus Park. On Monday, we announced our first key tenant in our Biotech Plus hub. And I'm going to share with you a little bit of our journey and why we are excited about what's going on in biotech in North Texas right now. And then we will leave some time for questions. So why biotech in North Texas? Other than just COVID, We've had cancer around for a long time. We haven't fixed that. We've got climate change. We have a lot of other issues going on. And so we believe the time is right. So why is the time right in North Texas right now? Well, many of your companies are probably on this map somewhere. We've built an innovation ecosystem here that's pretty incredible. So we've got great innovation. We've got great companies. And we obviously having the PTO office here is a big deal. So we believe we've actually been able to build some of the innovation that we've needed that maybe over the past few decades hadn't sort of coalesced, but we're there. So we're excited about that. It expands across lots of industries. So we've obviously got everything from technology, cybersecurity, IT, electronics, fintech, blockchain. We've got all the companies and we've got all the industries that we need to really think about this. As everybody knows, healthcare and biotech, there's biology and basic science in that. There's a lot of technology, a lot of engineering. We happen to have all the right kinds of companies here to really help us build this kind of ecosystem. We also have great demographics here. You've probably not that often thought about, but when you're running clinical trials and you're doing biomedical research, it's really important that when you're testing devices, drugs, ideas, that you're doing it on a wide array of people, ages, backgrounds, everything. And we are beginning to hear more and more about that in the COVID testing. That is taking the forefront of the conversation lately around vaccine testing to make sure that we've got the diversity of the market that we're really thinking about when we're trialing the vaccines. And that's important in any biotech area. So we've got a great demographic to be thinking about that. We've also got great job growth here. Again, the companies, all of you on this call, you're driving this, right? We still, even though we have had great job growth, we still have a really good cost of doing business here, and we've got a really good cost of living. And we were hearing more and more and more that there were people who were living here in North Texas, in our region, that were commuting to either coast for biotech opportunities because they were really passionate about biotech, but there weren't the opportunities here for them. So, you know, they were getting on the plane at DFW every week and traveling to Cambridge Square, traveling to the Bay Area, but they wanted to be here with their families. And so we really think there's an opportunity to capitalize on the talent that we already have here. And lastly, which I think has been one of the things that frankly for us has sort of been the tipping point in the last couple of years, which we didn't frankly have 10 years ago, is we now have a track record. And this is really important. You're all investors, right? You always question when you're investing in a first-time fund, to the leaders of the fund, to the CEOs, to the teams that are building these companies, do they have a track record of success? So as Dr. Neve was referring to earlier, we have a really exciting, IPO today out of one of our technologies that came out of the medical school, Taysha, which we're all following closely today. But we've had many of them over the last couple of years. And you can see that we've now got a track record. We've had multiple billion-dollar exits. And that was one of the metrics that we have thought a lot about, frankly, over the last decade. How many billion-dollar exits have you had in your community that can spur future talent, that can spur the belief that investing in these kinds of technologies in our own backyard can be successful? Not all of these obviously are local today, but they're based on local technology. So if you think about the billions of dollars that have been raised, and you think about the opportunity for our own community and our region to capture those jobs, to capture that capital, to be able to reinvest, you realize we've been leaving a lot on the table, and the time is now to move forward with thinking about how to keep people here in our own backyard. The other thing we have is a really rich ecosystem of collaboration. So this is the other sort of unknown thing. I think we've had lots and lots of disparate companies. So not only have we had talent here we didn't know about, we really actually have a pretty nice ecosystem of companies that you really need to build a rich biotech ecosystem. A lot of them exist. There just hasn't really been something that's pulled everybody together. So we really believe we've got a lot of what we need to get something like this started. So we figured the time was now. We decided we were going to go for it. We have been thinking about this for years. So it wasn't just that COVID showed up and we thought, let's go spend a lot of money building a biotech hub. This is something that we've been researching and studying for a long time. And as I said, we've hit a variety of milestones and metrics that made us fundamentally believe that investing against this opportunity, that it's a great time to do that. So one of the things that we knew, as I mentioned, was we've got lots of disparate pieces, but something and someone needed to pull them together. So that's the Biotech Plus Hub at Pegasus Park. As we know, we've got lots of activity on the coast and it was time to do something here that would attract the talent. So just to give you a quick heads up, when we talk about the Biotech Plus Hub, we are leaving it pretty broad right now. So we are not focusing in one particular area. That is not to say we won't eventually do that, because there are some particular strengths that we have in our region. With UTD and UT Southwestern, there's a lot of great bioengineering going on. And obviously there's a tremendous amount of wonderful expertise in UT Southwestern. So we'll see that we, eventually there might be some subspecialty, but right now we really want to leave things open and take advantage of all the wonderful kinds of companies that we have here and focus on broad innovation. So that does involve tech as well. We're going to be building the core elements to grow this biotech hub. You need to have the science is the single most important thing. We need to have skilled workforce, which we have actually been building over the last few years. In the last decade, we've really seen an increase. We needed to have a wet lab and a dedicated facility. And that has actually been a huge barrier to entry. We've got great companies that have great ideas, but then for them to spin out, they've had to go to either coast. We wanted to actually provide to them a location here in Dallas that they could spin out of their universities or start new companies if they're former entrepreneurs, but they actually needed a place to do that. We've got more and more biotech entrepreneurs here than we knew about. And actually, interestingly enough, Claire Aldridge at the Tech Transfer Office at UT Southwestern was telling me that she received dozens and dozens and dozens of calls from people on Monday after we announced the BioLabs announcement that said, hey, we actually live here in Dallas, but we've been commuting. We'd love to be part of this project. So we know that the people like that are beginning to come out of the woodwork. We just needed a magnet for them. And we needed access to capital. And we've got a lot of investors here locally, as Lyda said, that maybe have done things broadly in oil and gas. They understand risk taking. And we've also got a lot of investors who have got some track record in biotech investing. So we can leverage that as well. And most importantly, as I said, we've got the scientific environment that we need. For years, we know in Texas, we've been talking about tier 1 research institutions. We have phenomenal institutions here. We have phenomenal scientists and we have phenomenal people. And we've really got a unique opportunity to leverage that. And it's great when the Boston venture firms leverage that, but we'd like to leverage that first, then partner with the Boston venture firms. So here, I'm not going to read this all to you, but many of you, and Dr. Neve was kind enough to touch on this, but UT Southwestern alone is an incredible generator of opportunity. And so we're really excited that they're really a core partner in this effort in the Biotech Hub. So we're talking about this Biotech Hub. For those of you who are not familiar with Pegasus Park, really quickly, just to touch on Pegasus Park, is a 23-acre development near Stemmons and right next door to UT Southwestern. It's actually going to be a multi-purpose campus. It's going to incorporate lots of different things. Just to give you a sense of where it is, you can see it's the, I keep trying to point at my screen, that probably doesn't work for you. You can see the little Pegasus wings by the UT Southwestern Medical Center. So we are literally adjacent to the medical center. So it's really easy. If you're a UT Southwestern scientist and you want to spin out a company, you can both keep your academic lab as well as set up your company right next door and you're 5 minutes away. Not to mention we're 15 minutes from one of the most important airports in the world. This location is going to house not only our biotech hub, but you might have seen some announcements earlier this year around Water Cooler, which is our nonprofit shared space. We've got a conference center called Convene that's going to be available to both our biotech tenants as well as our community tenants. And we've got also a huge amount of commercial space. So this project has also been attracting lots of for-profit commercial companies that want to house themselves near this biotech hub. It might be venture funds, it might be legal firms. So we've got lots of groups who are really interested in trying to be part of this innovation hub that's happening. And let's not forget community brewing company. So, if you worked all day and need some entertainment and then you need to go back to the office, we're excited and thrilled that community beer company is going to be having their new location on site as well. So that makes it all a little extra fun. We spent a lot of time thinking about what building something like this can do for the region. This is going to be, if we can build it, a tremendous asset to the region, the tax base, workforce, growing companies. And again, if we can build this startup ecosystem that can connect into the coast, we're going to be able to hopefully generate return on investment that's going to continue to fuel, innovation in our own community. And just to be super clear, we're not doing this in lieu of either coast. What we believe is that there's opportunity to spin out companies and keep them here. We do know that some of those companies will still move eventually to the coast for whatever the opportunity is. But we just want to make sure that we're capturing and providing as much opportunity in the middle of the country as people have on either coast. And I think we were seeing pre-COVID that it was really hard to keep talent in Boston, and we were hearing more and more that places like Texas, as we know, they're rapidly coming here from California, as many of you might have had. But we want to make sure that we've got an opportunity for people to stay here. So that's what this project is all about. The announcement Mark was referring to earlier was our announcement on Monday that we're partnering with BioLabs, which is a best-in-class operator of biotech space. They've done it a variety of places all over the world, and they are heavily invested in labs like this with organizations that you've heard of on either coast. So they run Lab Central in the middle of Cambridge, which is one of the best biotech incubators in the country. And this will be their first central kind of really in between either coast. This will be the first time they've done anything like this. So we were thrilled and frankly had to compete to get them to come here. And so they too recognize the opportunity here in North Texas. They run an amazing model that allows us to get, as Mark said, from bench to bedside a lot faster and a lot cheaper, which is complicated in this industry. So we're excited to partner with them. So with that, this is what the lab spaces might look like. I am going to turn it over to make sure we've got time for some questions. If you're interested in becoming a tenant, if you're interested in being a partner on this effort in any of Pegasus Park and Biotech in particular, please feel free to use this link and reach out directly to us. This building and industry, as we know, is going to take everybody on this call today. We're really going to have to all pull together to build on the legacy of those who've been working on this for decades. The time is now. We have an opportunity. And let's use, this interest in COVID and people's personal health to really catalyze our community to move forward in something that really can create jobs and opportunities to make life better for everybody. So thank you for your time, and we're going to take some questions. Okay, so one of the questions is, how soon is this going to be open? We are in the process of building. If you drive by Stemmons Freeway and see Pegasus right now, what you'll see are huge cranes and new windows, and we are under design for the biotech piece. So all of this is going to open in 2021. So we are already getting calls, which is exciting, from biotech startups that are already looking for lab space, and we're excited to work with some of our local partners to house them while the space is being built, but this will all come online in 2021. Next question, how can corporations connect and work with the startups or ideas being created at Pegasus Park? Well, if you are a startup or you're a corporation that's interested or a community partner, like I said, please actually email that link, or you can just reach out to me directly. Find us on our LinkedIn page and talk to us about what kind of partnership you're looking for. So as I said, you might be a life sciences partner, you might be a law firm able to help with IP, you might be a venture fund, you might be a local investor. We're interested in bringing everybody together around this project. So please do reach out and let us know who you want to work with, who you want to be connected with, and we're happy to begin to make those connections. The other thing is we're working with Bio North Texas, we're working with Launch Bio, working with the medical school. We are going to begin to launch some programming over the next few months. So prior to the incubator actually opening, we are going to be working with those groups and Health Wildcatters, people who've already been doing amazing work. We're going to be working with them to continue the conversation and bring people in. So we're happy to connect you to those groups as well, if you think there's an opportunity to work with them. And probably what is time for the very last question before I start getting the flag is, in the innovation biotech space, many viable ideas are shut down because they are too big. What is your decision process on deciding which companies are worth the risk? Well, that's a great question. Obviously, biotech is a risky area. We've got some really smart people in our community, and because we do have relationships with everybody from the medical school to the big venture funds on the coast, the good news is LIDA and a variety of other investors have been working in this space for a long time. And so we're going to be, working with those groups to help us think through, which are the right companies to invest in, which are the right ones to put in the biotech space, which are the right ones to help but maybe not be in the incubator, which are the right ones to go ahead and send to Boston because it's an idea that needs to partner with, a big venture fund. So we are working through that process right now. We are also in discussion about a proof of concept fund that we're looking to launch. And if anyone's interested in knowing more about that, and eventually obviously bringing a bigger venture fund to play here to fund our local companies as well. So we are excited about it, as you can tell, and we are looking forward to working with everyone on the call to build a sector here and to, like I said, bring all the groups that have been working so hard to make this happen for so many years to really shine a light on the great work going on here in Texas. So thank you so much for that. I'm going to turn it back over to Eric.
Thank you. What incredible information. This has just been a fantastic session. We're so pleased to be able to hear from Linda from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. What a unique opportunity to hear what's going on real time in solving the COVID crisis. Lyda, your philanthropic efforts, what you've done, your risk taking and an investment that you've done, not just all of us in North Texas have benefited from that, but all over the world. So thank you so much. And Nicole, boy, you really opened my eyes on this Pegasus Park. And to those of you who maybe haven't had the pleasure to spend a lot of time with Nicole, we at Balfour Beatty did and got to witness firsthand when she led the effort, along with a number of other good people, for the Perot Museum of Nature and Science that Lyda obviously has also been a great contributor to her, and it was first class. So if Pegasus Park is anything like what you've done with the Perot Museum, this is going to be a great statement, not only for North Texas, but a great benefit to all those from the research that will happen from that. Want to also thank our presenting sponsor, UT Southwestern. You're a huge part of our region, a huge part of this conversation. Balfour Beatty got to be one of the leading contractors on the new Parkland Hospital, which UT Southwest works very closely with. It's another great facility that we have, an institution. And then to the Dallas Regional Chamber, you just continue to excel, continue to raise the bar on informing us, on leading us. I know on the economic development side, which I personally get involved in, what you do for North Texas to bring companies here is to be admired. Balfour Beatty is pleased to be part of this community, pleased to give back in what we do as a leading commercial contractor here in the healthcare space, in the corporate space, education, et cetera. So thank you all, and thank everyone for coming to this event today virtually. We hope we can come together, and we do have a couple of things. We've got another important DRC event coming up. So mark your calendars for Thursday, October 8th at 4 o'clock. We're going to be hosting a 2020 election briefing with a partner, Politico. So you'll hear experts break down the national electoral landscape and what it means for key Texas races. And as they all say, this is apparently quite an important election that we have coming up. So registration information, as well as other important resources for you, your employees and colleagues are available on the website, dallaschamber.org. So again, thank you all for joining us today. We hope that sometime soon we can all physically be together and have fellowship, and stay safe. We are adjourned. Thank you.